Breaking news. Where does that leave Putin and Wagner if Prigozhin is dead? The effects of Prigozhin's disappearance will be felt all the way in Africa, far beyond Russia and Ukraine. Niger's new junta might hire Wagner mercenaries to protect it from attacks by neighboring democracies, former colonial power France, or former superpower America. Perhaps one day Yevgeny Prigozhin could have retired in peace. There's also the possibility that he was exposed to Novichok, a nerve agent favored by Russia's intelligence agencies, and found in a wretched state. He could have slipped and fallen in the bathroom, crashed his car, or fallen out of a window, just like so many Russians have in recent years and just like any of us could. According to reports, Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, a notorious Russian private army, was killed in a plane crash en route from Moscow to St. Petersburg, along with the 3 pilots and 6 other passengers. If Prigozhin was indeed on board, then that would be the case. 2 separate times, including once after an African plane crash, his death was reported. Both times Prigozhin turned up later, he denied knowing anything about his own death. What has been said about Russia under President Vladimir Putin's autocratic and repressive rule also applies to the country as a whole, including Prigozhin's Wagner Group. Nothing is true, and everything is possible. If Prigozhin was indeed murdered, we do know that it would make some eerie sense. Since he led a brief mutiny against elements of Putin's government 2 months ago, he has had a huge question mark hovering over his head. Prigozhin, who was once known as Putin's chef, due to his close relationship with the president, claimed that his rebellion was not directed at Putin. Still, he managed to make Putin appear feeble. Putin was not likely to overlook this insubordination, what with his KGB-trained mind and his professed intolerance for betrayal. Maybe he thought vengeance was in order to send a message to would-be mutineers in modern Russia about the consequences of their actions. After the failed coup, Putin vowed that the traitors would be inevitably punished, and harshly. The crash's aesthetics and timing now have a macabre rhythm and rhyme that is consistent with the Putin regime. This week, it was also confirmed that General Sergei Surovikin had been removed from his position due to rumors that he was working with Prigozhin. What should Russians make of the news of Prigozhin's presumed death? Is the first question to consider. Putin certainly doesn't want them to take the hit as evidence that he's worried, but that's the conclusion some might make. Instead, he'd make it clear to anyone who might oppose him that disobedience will be met with severe consequences, including death. He will still face opposition, but his enemies will have to raise the bar, think Claus von Stauffenberg, to plot against him. Prigozhin's diehard supporters and Russia's ultra-nationalists, some of whom are now baying for blood, may not be deterred by this. Furthermore, Prigozhin would immediately become an even greater threat to Putin than he already was if he were to turn up alive. If Prigozhin really is dead, then what will become of the Wagner Group is an entirely different mystery. One of the Kremlin's favorite paramilitary armies, its brutal methods have been on display in the Sahel, a dry region of Africa south of the Sahara. Prigozhin's mercenaries have been offering their war-fighting services to any junta or dictator who is willing to pay, whether in diamond franchises or some other form of payment. From Putin's perspective, one of the benefits of these operations is that they force the French and Americans out, bring in the Russians, and cause a greater number of Africans to flee en masse to the European Union, which Putin despises. One reason why Europe's migration crisis will never be resolved is precisely this kind of nefarious intent. However, Wagner's future is currently uncertain. At first, Putin intended to allow Prigozhin and his mercenaries to withdraw to Russia's neighbor and de facto vassal state of Belarus after the mutiny in June. Poland and the Baltic states, both EU and NATO members, have been keeping a close eye on these Wagner fighters for fear they will cross the border and cause trouble. But without Prigozhin, the Wagner Group has lost its head. Dmitry Utkin, the group's purported founder, was also on board, but he didn't start the company, which is illegal in Russia. Prigozhin, however, became Wagner's public face, posting violent, crude telegram rants from the Ukrainian front. Wagner served as the Kremlin's unofficial representative, but he was also Prigozhin. This way, news of Prigozhin's disappearance will spread all the way to Africa, far beyond the crash site or even Russia or Ukraine. Niger's new junta might hire Wagner mercenaries to protect it from attacks by neighboring democracies, former colonial power France, or former superpower America. Putin's swift appointment of a new Wagner boss could be interpreted as evidence that he is confident of Prigozhin's death. What foreign leaders, like Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is supposed to be one of Putin's few remaining allies, should make of the plane crash is a third unanswered question. Curiously, it falls on the same day that leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are gathering in Johannesburg to publicly defy the United States and the West. Putin is unable to personally participate in this meeting due to the fact that an arrest warrant has been issued for him by the International Criminal Court for the alleged war crime of kidnapping Ukrainian children. He's joined virtually, which he's sure is uncomfortable for him. Will the hit on Prigozhin be seen by Xi and the other attendees in Johannesburg as proof that Putin is still a formidable czar? Or to serve as a constant reminder that Putin can't be trusted as a legitimate member of their emerging geopolitical coalition? To the delight of optimists, it appears that countries in the so-called Global South, including South Africa and India, are moving closer to openly siding with the Ukrainians in their self-defense and against Putin the aggressor, whose reputation for ruthless brutality will become ever more of a burden for anybody who associates with him.